When Pip realized that the man in the inn had met the convict he helped on the marshes, he wanted to take Joe away. Before we could go, the man gave Pip a new coin. "This is yours, he said, but be careful! He took the coin and left with Joe. When they realized that the coin was a pound note, Joe went back to the inn to return his note to him. However, the man had left. Mrs. Joe put the pound note on a shelf where it would be safe, and there it remained. On his next visit to Miss Havisham's house, Estella took him into a gloomy room where 3 ladies and a gentleman were waiting. They were Miss Havisham's relatives, Sarah, Georgiana, Camilla, and Raymond Pocket, who came to see her that day. Miss Havisham came to see Pip holding up her candle. Estella asked Pip if she was pretty. He told her she was very pretty. He told her that he wouldn't cry again. Pip met a large, dark-haired man and asked him if he was a neighbor, and Pip told him that Miss Havisham asked to see him, and he told him that wasn't a place to play in. Pip thought he might be a doctor, and entered Miss Havisham's room again. Pip didn't want to play and wanted to work. A table in her dining room laid with a tablecloth and plates, prepared for a wedding celebration, but now it was dusty and covered with spiders' webs. Miss Havisham entered the room. She asked Pip, "What do you think that is?" "It's a cake, Pip." "A wedding cake?" "Mine!" she said. She and Pip walked in the room until Estella and the Pockets came in. They wished her a happy birthday, but she sent them away. Miss Havisham told Pip that the wedding cake was brought a long time before he was born and everything was still there. Miss Havisham told Estella and Pip to play. Estella refused to speak to Pip. Miss Havisham asked him to return in a few days and allowed him to leave. Estella put his food and drink on the ground and shut the door. In the garden, he was surprised to see another boy looking at him out of a window. He disappeared into the house, and then came out into the garden to speak to him. He had very pale skin and short fair hair, so in his mind, Pip called him the pale young gentleman. He wanted to fight with Pip. The boy was Pip's age, but much taller than him. They fought, but Pip beat him. The boy was brave. He did not see the pale boy again. He visited the house many times. Miss Havisham was happy when Pip told her that Estella was pretty. Mrs. Joe and Uncle Pumblechook thought Miss Havisham wanted to give him all her money, and they wanted his visits to continue. He told Miss Havisham that he wanted to be a blacksmith. She asked him to get Joe at once. The money was to pay for his apprenticeship. She told him not to visit her again. His apprenticeship with Joe began. Pip no longer wanted to be a blacksmith. He was ashamed of his home and his family. Estella was often in his thoughts, although he did not see her anymore. She did not like his position in life, so he continued his education and worked hard. Biddy taught him as much as she knew. After a year, he wanted to visit Miss Havisham and thank her for helping him. Orlick, Joe's workman, was angry as he could not have a holiday like Pip too. He did not like Orlick. He was large and slow, and he often tried to make his life difficult at work. An argument began between Orlick and Mrs. Joe, who wanted him to see Miss Havisham again. Joe stopped them. When Pip visited Miss Havisham the next day, he was sorry that Estella was not there. Miss Havisham thought that he came as he wanted something from her. Pip told her that he came to thank her for his apprenticeship. She told him to visit him once a year. She told him that Estella had gone away for her education and she would become a lady. On the way home, he met Mr. Wopsle, one of the guests from that Christmas dinner a few years ago. Someone had broken into their house and they had hit Mrs. Joe on the head. Nothing had been taken, but a convict's leg irons lay on the floor. Pip was sure that the convict who he helped before wasn't the criminal. He suspected Orlick because he was so angry with his sister, but he had no proof. Mrs. Joe was unable to speak or walk again after the attack, but she could draw, and one day, she drew a hammer. Biddy and Pip knew that she meant Orlick, who she was afraid of him. Joe needed help in the house. Biddy came to cook and clean for them. After years, he continued my apprenticeship at the blacksmith's. He visited Miss Havisham's house once a year. He did not see Estella again, although he often thought of her. Biddy became an important member in the household. He told her he wanted to become a fine gentleman. He wanted to lead a different life as he loved Estella and wanted to improve himself as he admired her very much. He would tell Biddy everything as he trusted her. One evening while Joe and Pip were at the village inn, Pip noticed that a stranger was looking at them. He was the gentleman he had met on the stairs at Miss Havisham's house. He needed to speak privately to both of them. They invited him to come back to the workshop with them. Once there, he said he was Mr. Jaggers, a lawyer from London. He was working for someone but he could not tell their name. He said Pip had great expectations. He would receive a large amount of property in future, but he must have an education,